Hello and welcome to the Westcity Church podcast. If you'd like to get to know us more, find us at westcitychurch.com.au. We really hope that you're encouraged by today's message.
So here we go, ready today. Now, how much time have I got? Oh, Lordy, already. But it's all right, isn't it? I really hope I can nail what I'm going to tell you then, but let me just try. So do not judge, Matthew 7. Do not judge or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there's a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Jesus' words in the Sermon on the Mount. Boy, who needs to hear them? Can we all raise our hands, please? Because this is a call to all of us. Don't judge others. It's not your job. We've all got jobs in life, and none of us have been the judge of our brothers. That's quite a relief, actually, isn't it? And you know, I don't think we mean to. It's just almost this instinctive reaction. When something happens, we've kind of got these principles or we've got these personal values, and when someone crosses them, we kind of, well, of course she would say that. Of course he would think that. Of course they would do that to me because, you know, they don't, insensitive to my feelings. We're so tuned in to have a response, an automated response towards something which is done or said to us or in front of us. And then Jesus says, don't be judged. Don't be a judge, because then you'll end up being judged in the same measure, and none of us really want that. You know, I was at this Christian conference, let me just say, Christian conference, women's conference. Oh, golly, my behaviour was appalling, I should say. And I'm sitting in this conference, and I'm sitting down near the front row. I'm going to do something, you know. And someone's phone starts ringing up near the back. And I thought, oh, come on, get yourself organised. And I ignored it. The phone kept ringing. And then, you know, then I glanced back, you know, with my little look of, you know, what on earth are you doing back there? And then the woman took out the phone and started having a chat. Then I could really feel my heckles getting up. So I was like, I don't think that's acceptable. And then she got up and she ran out of the room, still talking. And I remember thinking, oh, that's good. At least you got the message. I was in a group of a lot of people, so, you know, I'm sure, you know, it wasn't just in response to me, but she would have felt that from that whole room, right? And as she left the room, and I settled in to listen to what was supposedly the really important thing happening, I had this incredible, overwhelming sense of God saying to me, you think that's okay? And I was desperately wanting to ignore that little prompt. God, I'm here, you know, for the really important stuff. And I had this incredible sense of God saying to me, and who are you to judge what was going on? Who are you? Do you have any idea what's going on in that woman's life? And suddenly running through my head was, she might have been waiting for that phone call. She actually might have been praying for that phone call. That could have been not a distraction, but the answer for her. And she might have taken that phone call because she just did not want to miss that other person. And she got up and she ran out because that was, and at that moment, I was just like, God, why do I do this? Why do I see things through my own filter of what's important? Why don't I actually think, I don't know the context, I don't know the story, I don't know what's happening. I just want to live a life of generosity and grace to someone else so that is what I live. Because you know what? When someone judges me, I think, you don't understand the context. You don't understand the story. You don't understand what's going on. I apply all those very same things that I'm called on to live out. Does anyone else do that? And you know, may I just say to you, I didn't suddenly get everything right in this area because of that event, but that event was actually a spectacular moment in my life. Because I started thinking, that's not the first nor the last time that happened to you, Kelley. And how are you going to respond? And I thought, okay, I'm really going to, I thought it through. I thought, okay, I'm going to develop the 24-hour principle. This is one of mine, right? Which is when something happens that I don't understand and I'm not sure if, I will never respond I'll give myself at least 24 hours to think something through. That was my, actually I've made it the 48-hour principle, may I just say, because 24 wasn't enough. Because I still did some things I wasn't proud of after 24. Because what I decided was, I want to make sure whenever I respond, that I respond in a way that I value, that it's consistent with him. And sometimes that'll mean I don't need to respond at all, which has become more of a pattern, may I just say. I'd love you to think that only happened to me, these years ago, and this is an area I'm under control with, but it's not. It's one of those ones that keeps challenging you, especially when you're at your worst. When you're at your best, you think you can carry anything. Life's going great, but when you're at your worst, boy, something happens and you kick back into something, a little weakness in you. The other day I was on the freeway and I was coming onto the freeway and I was in the wrong lane. I had to get into the right-hand lane to turn right at the lights and I nipped in front of someone. Has anyone else do a bit of nipping? I did the nip in front. And then because I'd nipped in front and kind of cut this guy off, I was the last car and we missed the lights. He wasn't happy. He was not happy. And my ute mate behind me decided that he was going to explain to me how unhappy he was. And he was gesturing, he was yelling, he was, I was just sitting there. And I got my little dander up. Not, mate, these things happen, so what? I had all that. And then the fantastic thing is, in came my little principle. Who are you? You don't know what's going on for him. You do not know how important it was for him to get through this. This may be really urgent. Not only that, what about you? Why did you nip in and cut him off? Why didn't you go? And I had this little conversation with myself, which enabled me in that time set at the lights to settle down. So I went through the lights, he went through, Paul came alongside of me, gave me, the mouthful, and we both went onto the freeway. But I'm calmed down totally, and I'm thinking to myself, you know what? I'm not going to respond. Not only that, I'm not going to cause him any grief because, I shouldn't have done it anyway, and I don't even know. But I thought I'd never see him again because he screamed up the freeway. But as luck would have had it, we pulled up next to each other again. There was a bit of a catastrophe further up. And I could see that we were going to pull up next to each other. And I thought, I do not want to incite him. I don't want to ignore him. So I thought, what I'm going to do? I'm just going to smile at him. So I pulled up next to him. And I could see him give me the thing. And I thought, and I don't want to be stupid and give too smiley because, what it's like. Then he'll think it's like the balance. The smile's got to be the right level, right? So I glanced at him and I gave him the old, He looks at me then and goes, don't worry. I said, my fault. He's going, no. We had this little exchange through the thing. At the end of it, I waved, he waved, off we went. I thought to myself, you're right, Jesus. A soft answer turns away wrath. Do you know? It's a constant challenge. Who remembers the Australian Royal Commission we had into the banking sector back in 2017-2019? They did this investigation. And in the end, they said their overall finding was the greed and profits triumph with the banking sector every time over honesty and customer care. Right? That was their final things. And I looked at the big four banks, at their values, right? And one of their values was, there are 4 core elements of how we work. Excellence for our customers. We put our customer needs first every time, never personal interests. Oh my. We get it right the first time, and we fix it fast, and we don't leave issues unresolved. We make banking easy and fast, and we never create Band-Aid fixes. And I was like, you know the problem? You say values, and you don't live them. And the hypocrisy of that is never lost on people. Better never to have said it than to have said it and not lived it, isn't it? If they said, we're all about profits, we'll help you when we can, but just remember, we win. You would have all gone, okay, at least I know what I got. And before we're so quick to speak, let's just think about what Jesus told us in the Sermon on the Mount. The values of a Christian. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they'll be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they'll see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they'll be called children of God. And blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And he told us his values on murder and adultery and divorce and loving our enemies, giving to the poor, resisting worry, money and treasures being based in heaven, avoiding false prophets, leaving aside selfishness and seeking first the kingdom of God. Oh, golly. And every time Jesus says all of these values, meekness and peace and anti-worry and treasures in heaven, he says, this is what you all stand for. And so often, our lives just don't provide the evidence of that. They just don't provide the evidence of it. And what people actually see is the evidence in how we live. I don't think it's that we don't believe this stuff. If you asked me what I believed about not worrying, how many people would say it's not a good thing to worry? Hands up. No, I don't really get into worry. No, worry's not a good thing. How many of you worry? If I said to you, what do you think about your treasures being in heaven? How many of you would say, yeah, your treasures are in heaven, not on earth, where moth and rust stuff do corrupt, and where thieves get in and steal? I actually know those scriptures. And then how often do we battle to have our treasures even into people and not stored up for ourselves? But can I just tell you, it's not in the believing. In fact, this is probably one of the biggest challenges, because I can tell you that Jesus didn't leave us without a clear idea of how to build these things into our lives. At the end of Matthew, at the end of his sermon, who knows how he finished this whole sermon, which really was the big, you've sat with Jesus, just imagine, you've spent the whole afternoon with him, sitting on the hill. He's given you, here's all the core issues of life. How then shall you live? You're thinking, you're fantastic. Gosh, you're just so wise, Jesus. That is just the way to live. I want to live like that. And then he says these words to you and me. Therefore, all you who believe everything of this, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain came down, and the streams rose, and the winds blew, and they beat against that house, because storms of life are going to come. Yet it did not fall because it had its foundations on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on the sand, and the rains came down and the streams rose and the winds blew and they beat against that house and it fell with a great crash. He says all of these words. At the end of it, he just says this idea. If you hear what I say, you think it through, you clarify what you believe, that's the sense of being, and then you do it. You build it into your life as a foundation. When the rains come and the winds beat and the storms pound against your house, and I have some pounding on my house, do you? Like pounding, but will not fall. And that's the call. What good is it, my brothers, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? Can that faith save him? If a brother or sister is poorly clothed and lacking in daily food, and one of you says to them, go in peace, be warm, be filled, without giving them the things needed for the body, what good is that? So also, faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. But someone will say, but you've got faith and I've got works, so show me your faith apart from your works and I'll show you my faith by my works. You believe that God is one, you do well. You do well. But you know, even the demons believe and they shudder. You see that faith was active along with his works, this is Abraham, and faith was completed by his works, and the scripture was fulfilled that says Abraham believed God and it was counted to him as righteousness. He was called a friend of God. You see that a person is justified by works and not by faith alone. You know, I think we're in a really interesting place in culture, and that's this. We've looked so often at a life completely dominated by works. When people just do the right thing, but without believing or knowing what they're doing or any sense of conviction, and we've gone, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be a pretender who just does the right thing. Because some point, it kind of finds you out. That's happened to me when I've done what I thought my parents have told me or whatever, a period of time, and then at some point I realised, you know what, I don't even know if I believe it, or I'm just kind of doing the right stuff, but there's nothing behind it. And you know there's another kind of hypocrisy going on there in you. And I reckon we've gone, I don't want to be just a doer. I actually want to be and believe and live out of convictions. So we've tended to swing over to here, which is, don't ask me what I'm doing, just ask me what I'm believing. Have you seen that in culture? I've seen that a lot. So people a lot of times will say, no, it's about being. And I'm like, I got no issues with it. I just think it's about the order. I just think the being comes first. The being, the believing, the settling, the leaning into, discovering what you believe, that comes first. But if that doesn't lead to an evidence of doing, then Jesus says you're not building your house on a rock that's going to be able to stand, because believing enough won't do it. It just won't do it. Because if it did, he honestly would have let us do that. I reckon he would have said, as long as you believe these words of mine, you're safe as houses. But he didn't. He finished that whole Sermon on the Mount by saying, unless you hear these words of mine and you practice them, you'll be shipwrecked. Because the storms are coming. He promises you're going to have storms of life. In this world, you will have trouble. That's a great promise, isn't it? Oh, I feel great about that. That's what Jesus said. He said, in this world, you will have trouble. But fear not, for I have overcome the world. I was just thinking I'm going to wrap it up. But let me just wrap it up by saying something that has really helped me, is that I reckon we hear the words of Jesus, and here comes the real beautiful thing of how we go about it. We just got to build this firm foundation by not just hearing them, but by the doing of them. And I kind of go, here's these beautiful values. They sit out there. I like the fact in many organisations, they just sit out there as thought bubbles. These are thought bubbles. They're nice. But I think what happens is, what we're called to, is to actually make them bricks in the wall of our foundations. Take the thought bubble and say, peace. And it moves from the thought bubble to the foundation by the practice of it. As we practice it, it comes out of just being a concept, and it actually becomes the firm foundation that we can rely on when things get tough. I reckon the way we do that is the first thing, we've got to actually get better at thinking about stuff. When you come today and you hear a message from anyone, so often we don't think about it. I think we don't want to think about it sometimes because it's so challenging. So someone comes in and talks about money, and a lot of people, golly, don't touch money. I'm like, no, you should never be a victim of arm twisting. Never. Scripture's so clear. Don't let someone try and manipulate you with money. And the only way that can happen is you go, I'm thinking about it. What do I believe about it? What does Scripture say about it? What's my position on that? And I think sometimes we want the church to lay out all these positions. Like, can you tell me your position on, IVF? That was one a few years ago, right? Now it's probably not so much an issue, but can the church lay out its position on IVF? Can the church please lay out its position on tithing? And I'm like, why is the church laying out its position on something which is a responsibility of the people? I think we can teach, but you know who needs to lay out their position? Us. Each one of us. And it only happens because you've got to think it through. You've got to do the hard work of knowing what you believe. I know I had to do the hard work of not judging. I did the hard work of not taking offence. People, I've just thought it through. I'm not taking offence. You can offer it to me as many times as you like, but I'm not taking it. I know it destroys people. And people are often so quick to take it. Oh, you're really looking lovely today. It's such a shame about your hair, You think, if someone says to me, your hair's not looking great today, I'm like, yeah, I can understand why. I haven't done it for probably 4 days. There's no need to take offence because you're in charge of what you let into your heart. And offence is like a silent arrow that ruins people every day. And you've got to be so careful about people because they're so touchy. And you kind of look at them the wrong way and what does that mean? Thinking, I don't know, I think my eyes just cross-eyed, like it didn't mean anything. But you've got to be prepared, guys. Can I just say, invest into thinking through the things that matter to you. And every time something pricks you, so say someone comes and talks on humility and you think, I'm humble, I'm really humble, so humble. What the problem? I'm so humble. You need to think, maybe I'm not. Go and think about it. Go and do the hard work of discovering what you believe and finding out where you've got your challenges. I love these concepts right now when people, they say something, you just don't realise how things get put into you. So that ad used to come on, gosh, it drove me crazy. For the most important person in the world, you. Since when have I been the most important person in the world? Can I ask, since when have you been the most important person in the world? I'm not even the most important person in my own family, they're less in the world. Something comes like that, I think, it's not true. I'm not living like it is true. I'm just a person. I have no more value than the person next to me, and I have no less value. Do you see what I mean? But you've got to think and decide what you believe. We've all got to do that for ourselves. But then the second thing is not only coming up with what you believe, but then you've got to come up with your own implementation plan. I sound like I've got an accountancy idea going on here, don't I? And the only reason I say this is all very well to know what you believe, but you've got to know how you've got to live it out. I've got my 48-hour rule. It's good. It helps me. looks after me. I have my own rules around not taking offence. They're just like little guidelines that protect me. You know, it's this kind of that concept, if you know it's going to rain, who brought an umbrella? I did. I know it's going to rain. I think people go through their whole life never carrying any umbrellas and just thinking on the moment they'll come up with an answer. An implementation plan is your umbrella for life, guarding your heart, because out of it are the issues of life. People often talk about Mary, you know, Mary and Martha. You know how Martha was the doer and Mary was sitting at Jesus' feet. We know that one, don't we? And then this story comes out in church life, like, I don't want to be Martha, I want to be Mary. And I'm just like, you know, I remember going to a conference and it was a Mary conference because none of us wanted to be Martha. You know, I went, oh, golly. But do you know what? Here's what I love. Mary is, in the scriptures, also known as Mary of Bethany, right? And she sat at his feet. She's the same Mary who broke the alabaster pot and poured the most expensive perfume over him, over Jesus. She was working from a different value system. She was listening. She was thinking, what do I believe? Then she took the most precious thing she had and she just poured it over him. She was a doer. And what was important to her. She gave all of her finances. They're for you. And we've got to take time to think what we believe and think how we're going to do it. And then can I just say we've got to practice it. Practice, practice, practice makes perfect. Who's heard of the 10,000 hour principle? You want to be good at something, it takes about 10,000 hours. That's terrifying, isn't it? I've got a lot of things to work on. I've got a lot of 10,000 hours. But that's the principle. If you want to be great at something, it takes 10,000 hours. And we think we can give something 20 minutes of our time once and we'll be great at it. When I was I go to Rwanda quite a lot with my work, as you all know. And I remember if you all remember the genocide that came to Rwanda. And back in 1994, they had a terrible genocide that wiped out 15% of their population. They killed each other in basically a civil war. But it wasn't people who didn't know each other. It was neighbours killing neighbours. Someone who'd been your friend, honestly, your school friend, childhood friend for your whole life, has killed your whole family because of two different social groups. Can you imagine how? And then at the end of the war, because at some point they had to start recovering, the person was let out of the jail and came back and lived back next door to you. Can you imagine what you had to do around the area of forgiveness? And I remember saying to John Collins in Rwanda one time, who's the leader of the organisation I work with, and I said to him, John, you're so much better at forgiveness than we are. I was being so magnanimous because I was looking at the way they treated forgiveness, and I'm thinking it's so challenging. Like, how would I be in that situation? And I'll never forget John's words, and he said to me, Kelley, you're so naive. We're merely practicing forgiveness with the full expectation that one day we really will believe it. He was saying, of course, we've got a mental assent to it. We know it's the right thing, but we're just practicing it because we're trying to actually put it out of our heads and we're trying to move it into our foundation. You know, we hear Jesus speaking of this new way, and something deep within us kind of leaps. We know it's the kingdom way, and we want to live in a world that has his values and his ways and his practices where they're commonplace. But too often we're overwhelmed, we're by disappointment, by distraction, we're lack of desperation to live it. And we look about us and we're lamenting about our world and waiting for it to change. But instead, we're called to build the foundations of the kingdom, the new way, into our own individual lives. And although these foundations, they may start with a hearing and believing, they're established. They're built by doing. And we're challenged to be these doers of the word, carrying Christ with integrity, with authenticity, with passion. And guess what happens when we do? Not only do we save ourselves from personal disaster, but we become change makers and light bearers and wisdom holders in a world that's crying out for hope and grace and belonging. And I know that all those things can be found in the Jesus way. And we can see it. May we live it. Amen.
How good was that message? Thank you so much for joining us. Each week at Westcity, we say a benediction together. We do this because we believe that the purpose of the church is to be a caring community for the world, and that as we go and serve others, we enter into Christ's work of welcome, restoration and healing, both for us and others. We believe that in doing so, we get to see and encounter Christ. So let's say the benediction together. We come together as the church to be reminded of the go of Christ. So we will go out and feed the hungry, go out and clothe the naked, go out and fight for justice, go out and end oppression, go out and proclaim anew the old story, go out and associate with those who don't look like us, think like us, act like us, and don't even like us. And we'll do it all in the name of the one who sent us. His name is Jesus.